The pen hovered over the last signature line, and Imani Calloway's hand wouldn't stop shaking. 12 years. 12 years of a marriage compressed into 38 pages of legal language, and all she had to do was write her name. The Atlanta courtroom smelled like floor polish and old coffee. Across the polished walnut table, her soon-to-be ex-husband, Devin, leaned back in his chair like a man who'd already won something. His new attorney whispered in his ear. He smirked. Imani's fingers tightened around the pen. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and somewhere behind her, the courtroom door creaked open. She didn't turn around. She couldn't, because if she turned around, she'd see him. The man who had walked into her bakery 6 months ago with rain on his charcoal coat and a quiet voice that did something dangerous to her pulse. The man whose name was whispered in places she didn't know existed. The man who had told her, 3 nights ago, in the kitchen of her shop while she was kneading dough at 2 a.m, "When you sign that paper, Imani, the woman who walks out of that courtroom belongs to no one. Not him, not your past, just herself. And then, if she chooses, she belongs to me." The judge cleared his throat. "Mrs. Calloway, are you prepared to sign?" She pressed the pen to the paper. The ink bled into the line like a promise. Her name, her freedom, her terrifying, unwritten future. When she stood up, she finally let herself turn. He was there, in the back row, in a black suit that looked like it had been stitched onto him. Jihoon Seo, 6'2" of stillness and storm. His dark eyes met hers across the room, and he didn't smile. He just nodded. Once. And then he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Now you're free to be mine." Devin's smirk vanished. The bailiff froze. And Imani Calloway, 34 years old, freshly divorced, and standing in heels she'd bought herself, felt something she hadn't felt in 12 years. Power. But to understand how Imani ended up here in a courtroom with a Korean Mafia boss claiming her in front of her ex-husband, we need to go back. Way back. To a smaller version of her, a quieter version. A version who used to apologize for taking up space. If you've ever poured your whole self into a marriage, a job, a family, and watched the people you loved take and take until there was nothing of you left, this story is for you. If you've ever stood in a kitchen at midnight wondering when you stopped recognizing the woman in the reflection of the oven door, this story is for you. If you've ever wondered whether it's too late to choose yourself, whether you're allowed to want more, whether real love is supposed to feel like becoming bigger instead of smaller, stay with me. Because what happens to Imani Calloway over the next 6 months will challenge everything you thought you knew about loyalty, sacrifice, and the kind of man worth waiting for. Before we go deeper, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and tell me, have you ever signed something that scared you only to realize later it was the bravest thing you ever did? I read every single one. Now, let's go back to where it all started. Imani Calloway used to wake up at 4:17 in the morning. Not 4:15, not 4:20, 4:17. Because that was the exact amount of time she needed to start the dough, set the proofing oven, and have Devin's protein shake blended before he came downstairs at 5:30 to go to the gym he didn't actually own. He just managed the front desk, but he liked the way owner sounded when he met new people. Their house in East Atlanta had a mortgage in her name. The bakery, Sugarbird, the little corner shop on Edgewood Avenue, was hers too, built from a $14,000 small business loan she'd taken out 3 years into the marriage when Devin had said, "Babe, you should do something with that hobby of yours." She'd built it brick by brick, hand-lettered the menu board, painted the walls a soft cream, and hung up her grandmother's old rolling pin behind the register. By the time the doors opened at 7 a.m., she'd already worked 3 hours. By the time she came home at 7 p.m., she'd worked another 12. Devin usually wasn't home. Devin was usually networking. Devin's networking usually smelled like Hennessy and another woman's perfume, but Imani had become very good at not asking questions. She told herself it was a phase. Marriages had phases. Her mother, Loretta, had told her so at the wedding 12 years ago, gripping her hands on the church steps. "Baby, a man is a project. You don't quit a project halfway." So Imani didn't quit. She didn't quit when Devin borrowed $6,000 from the bakery account to invest in a friend's failed clothing line. She didn't quit when she found a receipt for a hotel room in Buckhead in his jacket pocket, and he laughed and said it was for a client. She didn't quit when his mother, Miss Brenda, started showing up unannounced to the bakery to check on her son's investment, a business Devin had not put 1 cent into. She just got smaller, quieter. She stopped going out with her best friend, Yara Whitfield, the loud-mouthed lawyer who had been telling her for years, "Sis, that man is a parasite and you are the host." She stopped wearing the red lipstick she used to love. She stopped writing in the leather journal her father had given her before he died. The lie she believed, the one Devin and his mother and even her own mother had stitched into her, was that a good black woman holds it together. A good black woman doesn't break up her family. A good black woman makes it work. Even when making it work means doing the work of 3 people while your husband posts gym selfies on Instagram with captions about grinding. The night everything cracked open was a Tuesday in October, ordinary as cornbread. Imani came home at 8:43 p.m. with flour still in her hair and a bruise on her hip from bumping the walk-in freezer. Devin was on the couch. He didn't look up. "Yo," he said. "My mom is coming to stay for a few months. Her lease is up. I told her she could have the guest room." Imani set her keys down. "Devin, we talked about this. Last time she stayed, It's my house too." "It's not, though." The words were out before she could swallow them. He looked up then, slow, like a man deciding whether to be amused or angry. "What did you just say?" She didn't answer. She walked upstairs, locked the bathroom door, sat on the edge of the tub and cried so quietly the tears didn't even hit the porcelain. She didn't know yet that the next morning a man in a charcoal coat was going to walk into her bakery during a thunderstorm and ask for a black coffee and a slice of sweet potato pie. She didn't know yet that her life, the entire frail architecture of it, was about to come down. She just knew she was tired. So tired. The rain came down in sheets the morning Jihoon Seo walked into Sugarbird. It was 9:14 a.m. on a Wednesday, the slow hour between the commuter rush and the lunch crowd. Imani was alone behind the counter, restocking the pastry case, when the bell above the door chimed and a tall figure stepped inside, shaking water from a coat that probably cost more than her monthly mortgage. He was Korean, late 30s, maybe early 40s, hard to tell. Sharp jaw, dark hair cut close on the sides, a small silver scar threading through his left eyebrow. He didn't look around the way most customers did. He looked at her, like he'd come in specifically to look at her. "Coffee?" he said. His voice was low, accented, but precise. "Black. And whatever pie that is." She rang him up. Her fingers betrayed her on the register keys. She blamed the cold. He sat by the window. He didn't touch his phone. He just ate slowly, watching the rain, occasionally glancing toward her in a way that wasn't predatory. It was noticing, like he was cataloging her. The smudge of flour on her wrist, the way she rolled her shoulders when she thought no one was watching, the faint tremor in her left hand when she lifted the coffee pot. When he finished, he came back to the counter, set down a $50 bill on a $7 tab. "Keep it," he said. Then softer. "You always carry that much?" "Excuse me?" "That weight." He nodded once like a man identifying a wound. "You carry it in your shoulders. Someone is heavier than you can hold." She didn't know what to say. She said nothing. He walked out into the rain. He came back the next day, and the next. By the second week, she knew his order without asking. By the third week, he was bringing her things. Not flowers, not jewelry. Useful things. A better knife for the kitchen, sharper than anything she'd ever owned. A small black notebook with creamy pages because he'd seen her writing receipts on napkins. A heavy umbrella because she'd run to her car in the rain 3 days in a row. His name, he eventually told her, was Jihoon Seo. He was a consultant. He was visiting from Seoul. He was in Atlanta on business. Yara, who came by the shop one Friday afternoon and saw him sitting in his usual booth, pulled Imani into the back with a face like she'd just seen a ghost. Imani, look at me. Do you know who that man is? He's a customer. That is Seo Jihoon. Sis. That is... The family runs half the import-export through the port of Incheon. There's a federal task force file on him thicker than my arm. I've seen it. I worked a case last year that touched the edges. What is he doing in your bakery? Imani felt her stomach drop and lift at the same time, a sick gravity. He just orders coffee. Men like that don't just order coffee. That night, Imani stood in her kitchen at midnight, the house dark, Devin snoring upstairs in their bed, his mother in the guest room watching reality TV with the volume too loud. She held the small black notebook Jihoon had given her. She opened it. On the first page, in handwriting like blade strokes, he had written, "For the woman who is allowed to want things, J." She closed the book. She didn't sleep at all that night, not because she was afraid of him, because she was afraid of how much she wasn't afraid. The truth came out 2 weeks later, on a Thursday, and it didn't come from Jihoon. It came from Yara, who burst into Sugarbird at 4:30 in the afternoon with her laptop bag and a face Imani had never seen on her before. "Close the shop. Now." "Yara, what? Now, Imani." Imani flipped the sign, locked the door. Yara opened her laptop on the counter and turned the screen toward her, and there, in a grainy surveillance still, was a photograph of Devin. Imani's Devin, sitting in a booth at a steakhouse in Buckhead, laughing with 2 men Imani didn't recognize. "Yara, what is this?" "My firm took a corporate fraud case 6 months ago. We've been pulling records. Imani, Devin has been laundering money through your bakery." The room tilted. Imani gripped the counter. "What? The deposits, the cash receipts, the investments he keeps making with his cousin's gym in Decatur? Sugarbird's books are cooked, Imani. He's been running roughly $40,000 a month through your accounts for almost 2 years. He used your business license, your name, your signature on 3 of the filings. That's not... Yara, I signed my own deposits. I would have... You sign what he hands you, Imani. You told me yourself. You said he started helping with the books a 1.5 years ago." Imani's knees gave. She sat down hard on a flour bin. "There's more." "Oh, God." "The men he's working with..." Yara's voice dropped, even though there was no one to overhear. "They are not nice men. They are connected to a trafficking pipeline up the I-85 corridor. The federal task force has been building a RICO case for almost a year. Imani, when this comes down, and it is coming down in weeks, maybe days, your name is on enough paper that the U.S. attorney is going to have a field day. You could lose the bakery, you could lose the house, you could go to prison." The bell over the door rang. Imani had locked it. She knew she had locked it. Jihoon Seo stood in the doorway with a key in his hand, a duplicate of hers. She didn't ask how he had it. There were too many other things to ask. He walked in, closed the door behind him, looked at the laptop, looked at Yara, looked at Imani sitting on the flour bin with her face in her hands. "You've told her," he said to Yara. Yara's eyes narrowed. "You knew?" "I knew before I walked into this shop the first time." Imani lifted her head slowly. "What?" Jihoon didn't sit. He stood very still in the middle of her bakery, his coat dripping rain onto the tile, and he told her the truth, like a man placing weapons on a table. "My family does not know your husband, but the men he is working with, the men in that photograph, have been moving product through Atlanta that interferes with my family's legitimate import operations at the port of Savannah. 6 months ago, my brother sent me here to find the leak. The leak was Devin Calloway." He paused. "I came to the bakery the first time to look at you, to decide if you were part of it." She stared at him. "And I watched you give a stranger an extra muffin because his hands were shaking. I watched you pay a homeless woman in cash for sweeping your sidewalk. I watched a man eat your husband's lies for breakfast every morning while you carried his weight." His jaw tightened. "You are not part of it. You are the one being used." Imani's voice was a whisper. What do you want from me, Jihoon? He looked at her for a long moment. I want to give you a way out, but I will not lie about what I am, and I will not save you. I will only stand beside you while you save yourself. He laid it out on the counter like a contract written in air. 3 things, Jihoon said. First, you file for divorce tomorrow, not next week. Tomorrow. Yara has the papers ready. Yes, she and I have spoken. Yara nodded grimly. Imani's mouth fell open. Second, you go to the federal task force before they come to you. You tell them everything. You sign a cooperation agreement. You give them the books, the deposits, the dates. Yara has been preparing this file for 2 months. 2 months? Imani turned to Yara. I couldn't tell you until I knew you weren't a co-conspirator. I'm sorry, sis. I needed clean discovery. Jihoon continued, undeterred. Third, you let me put a man at your bakery. Quiet. Unarmed, visibly. He drinks coffee in the corner from open to close. Because the moment Devin realizes you've turned, the people he works with will not be patient. They will come for you to silence you, and I will not allow that. Imani's throat was dry. And what do you get? I get my brother's operation cleaned of a problem that was costing my family 7 figures a quarter. That is honest. His eyes didn't leave hers. And I get to know that the woman I have been watching for 6 months walks out of this with her name, her shop, and her freedom intact. That is also honest. Jihoon, her voice caught. Are you telling me I am telling you I am not a good man by most measures. My family's businesses are not all clean. I have done things I would not describe to you in this kitchen. If you are looking for a hero, look elsewhere. There are none here. He stepped closer, just 1 step, and his voice dropped. But I do not lie. I do not cheat. And I do not take from the people I claim. If you let me stand beside you in this, I will stand beside you. If you tell me to leave, I will leave tonight, and you will never see me again. And the offer of cooperation with the task force still stands without me. That is your choice, not mine. She looked at Yara. Yara, who had known her since they were 19 years old at Spelman, who had held her hair when she'd thrown up at her bachelorette party 12 years ago, who had warned her about Devin from the very first date. Yara nodded once. The legal piece is real, Imani. The protection piece, that's your call. But I will tell you this. If it weren't him offering, I'd be hiring someone myself. Imani stood up from the flour bin. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was not. I want the bakery in my name, only forever. No one, not him, not you, not anyone, gets a piece of Sugarbird. That's mine. Done, Jihoon said. I want to file the divorce myself. I want to be the one to tell Devin. Not you, not Yara, me. Yes, said Yara, and I want it understood. She turned to Jihoon, and for the first time in 12 years she felt the full size of her own body. That I am not yours. Not yet. Not because of any of this. If, after the dust settles, there is something between us, we figure that out as 2 free people, not as a woman who owes you her life. Jihoon Seo, the man Yara's federal sources had a file on as thick as her arm, smiled for the first time. It was a small smile, almost reluctant. That, he said, is exactly the answer I was waiting for. She walked into her house at 9 p.m. that night with divorce papers in her purse. Devin was on the couch. She did not sit down. I want you out by Friday, she said, and I am going to ruin you on Monday. Devin laughed. He actually laughed. That low, dismissive laugh she had heard 1,000 times. The one he used to make her feel small. Girl, what are you talking about? You ain't ruining nothing. Sit down. Let me make you some tea. I've already filed. His face shifted. Filed what? Divorce. And on Monday at 9 a.m., I'm sitting down with the U.S. Attorney's Office. I have everything, Devin. The deposits. The shell deposits through Sugarbird, Marcus and Trey from the steakhouse, the trips to Savannah, everything. For 1 second, the mask slipped. She saw fear cross his face. Naked, stripped fear. And then it was replaced by something uglier. "You stupid." He stood up fast. "You don't know what you're doing. Those are not men you cross, Imani. You're going to get us killed." "No," she said, and her voice was steadier than her heart. "I'm going to get you arrested. There is no us anymore." He came toward her. 2 steps. 3. The front door opened. A man Imani had seen exactly once before, sitting in the corner booth at her bakery that morning, drinking coffee, reading a Korean newspaper, stepped into her foyer. He was not large. He did not raise his voice. He simply stood in the doorway with his hands clasped politely in front of him. "Mr. Calloway," he said in lightly accented English, "please pack your things. You have until 10 p.m. The lady has been generous." Devin froze. He looked at Imani. He looked at the man. He looked back at Imani. "You're with them?" His voice cracked. She didn't answer. He went upstairs. He came down 40 minutes later with 2 duffel bags. He didn't look at her. His mother, sobbing dramatically about the disrespect of being put out of her son's house at this hour, followed him to the curb. The door closed. Imani locked it. She slid down to the floor with her back against it. She did not cry. She breathed. The next morning, at 9 a.m., she walked into the federal building on Spring Street with Yara on one side and a thick accordion folder of bank records under her arm. She sat in a small, windowless room across from a U.S. attorney named Renata Oho, a tired-looking black woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a beaded chain. Imani told her everything. She told her about the deposits she didn't understand, the investment partners, the signatures she'd given without reading. The cash that came in envelopes Devin said were from his mama's house. She handed over photographs, receipts, screenshots of texts, 3 years of bank statements. Renata listened for 2 hours without interrupting. When Imani was finished, the prosecutor took off her glasses and looked at her for a long moment. "Mrs. Calloway, you understand that what you've just given me is going to take down your husband and at least 4 other men, one of whom is a sitting member of a city council in this state?" "Yes." "You understand that you will be a federal witness?" "Yes." "You understand the personal cost?" "I understand," Imani said, that the cost of staying quiet was higher. Renata Oho wrote 1 word on her legal pad. Imani couldn't read it upside down. She found out later it said, "Unbreakable." By the time she got back to Sugarbird that afternoon, 3 news vans were parked outside. Someone, she never found out who. She suspected Yara, who suspected Jihoon, who never confirmed, had leaked to a reporter at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that a federal indictment was coming, and that the bakery owner cooperating was an East Atlanta woman named Imani Calloway. She walked through the cameras with her chin up. She unlocked her shop. She turned the sign to open. And then, alone in the back kitchen with her hands deep in dough that smelled like vanilla and yeast and the version of herself she was building back from the ground up, she finally allowed herself 1 minute, just one, to sob. Quick reminder, and if this story is hitting you somewhere real, do me a favor and hit that like button. It tells the algorithm to share Imani's story with someone else who needs to hear it tonight. And drop a comment below. What's the boundary you finally set? I want to know. The trial started on a cold Tuesday in February, 4 months after Imani filed. Devin Calloway sat at the defendant's table in a gray suit that didn't fit right. His lawyer was a public defender with a tie that didn't match. His mother sat behind him, no longer sobbing, just glaring. Imani sat in the second row of the gallery in a navy dress she'd bought herself for $89 at Macy's. Yara sat beside her. Jihoon was not in the courtroom, by design. Renata Oho had been very clear that any visible association with outside parties would compromise the case, and Jihoon, who, it turned out, had quietly fed the task force 3 months of his own surveillance on Devin's associates, had agreed to stay invisible. When Imani took the stand on day 3, the courtroom was so full people were standing. The defense attorney tried to break her. "Mrs. Calloway, isn't it true that you signed the financial documents in question?" "Yes." "And you read them before signing?" "No." "You didn't read them?" "My husband told me they were renewals of the bakery's permits. I trusted him." "You expect this jury to believe a woman of your business experience." "I expect this jury," Imani said, looking directly at the 12 people in the box, "to believe that a woman can run a successful business and still trust her husband not to commit federal crimes in her name. That is not stupidity. That is marriage." A juror in the second row, a black woman about her mother's age, nodded once. Slowly. Imani saw it. The verdict came down on a Friday at 4:42 in the afternoon. Guilty on 11 of 13 counts. Devin turned around in his chair as the marshals approached, and for the first time in 12 years, he looked at her without contempt. His face was wet. "Imani, don't," she said quietly from the second row. "You don't get to say my name anymore." They led him out in handcuffs. His sentencing would come 3 months later, 14 years in federal prison. Outside the courthouse, the reporters were waiting. A young woman from Channel 5 pushed a microphone toward her. "Mrs. Calloway, do you have a statement?" Imani thought for a long moment. She thought about her father, who had died believing she'd married a good man. She thought about her mother, who had told her marriage was a project. She thought about every woman watching at home who had ever been told that loyalty meant disappearing. "My name is Imani Calloway," she said. "I'm 34 years old. I own a bakery on Edgewood Avenue. I worked 12 years for a man who used my name to commit crimes I never agreed to. Today, the court got it right." She paused. "And to anyone watching this who is still in the version of their life where they're being made small, your story is not over. Mine wasn't. Yours isn't either." The clip went viral by Sunday morning. By Monday, the line outside Sugarbird stretched around the block. She was in the back kitchen at 6:15 on a Wednesday morning when the bell over the front door chimed. She'd hired 3 new employees by then. The shop was busier than it had ever been. Essence had run a feature, the AJC had done a Sunday profile, and the line of customers who wanted to support Black women survivors had not slowed down in 8 weeks, but it was 6:15 a.m., and they didn't open until 7. The door should have been locked. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked out. Her mother was standing in the middle of the bakery in her good church coat. "Mama, how did you, Tasha let me in, said she was running to her car." Loretta Calloway looked around the bakery slowly. The framed AJC article, the new espresso machine, the little wooden sign Yara had given her that read, "Owner, Imani Calloway. No one else." "It looks nice in here, baby." "Mama, why are you here?" Her mother sat down at one of the small bistro tables. She did not take her coat off. "Devin's mama called me yesterday. Brenda. She said Devin's been writing letters from inside. He's sorry, baby. He's real sorry." Imani didn't sit. "Brenda said if you wrote to the judge, just one letter, talking about how he was a good man, how he just got mixed up in the wrong crowd, the parole board down the line might—" "No. Baby, just hear me out." "No, Mama." Loretta's voice rose. The voice Imani had been trained on her whole life, the voice that meant be smaller. "You are not the kind of woman who turns her back on the father of—" "I never had children with him, Mama. Thank God I never had children with him. He is still your husband in the eyes of—" "He is not my husband." The state of Georgia and the United States federal government both made that very clear. "Imani Loretta Calloway, you sit down and you listen to me." Imani sat, but not because her mother had told her to. She sat because she wanted to look her mother in the eye when she said what she was about to say. "Mama, I love you, and I am going to say this once. The woman you raised me to be, the one who held everything together, who never raised her voice, who made everyone else's plate before her own, that woman almost died in this marriage. Not metaphorically. I lost 26 pounds the last year I was with him, Mama. My hair was falling out. I had not laughed, really laughed, in 3 years. The version of me you are asking me to go back to so I can save Devon's parole hearing, that version of me is gone. And I am not bringing her back, not for him, not for Brenda, not for the family name, not even for you. Her mother's eyes filled. So who are you now? Loretta whispered. I'm her daughter, Imani said, gesturing to the bakery. I'm Sugarbird's owner. I'm the woman in that newspaper. I am still your child, Mama, but I am nobody's project anymore. Her mother stood up slowly. She walked to the door. At the threshold, she turned back. Your daddy would be proud of you, baby. I should have told you that a long time ago. She left. Imani sat in the empty bakery for a long time, watching the sun come up through the front window, and she cried, not the silent tears of the bathroom floor 12 months ago, but full, shoulder-shaking, cleansing tears, the kind that come out of a body that is finally allowed to feel. Sugarbird's second location opened on a bright Saturday in late June, not in East Atlanta, in Inman Park, on a corner lot Imani had bought outright. Outright, no loan, no investor, no cosigner. With money she'd earned, every single dollar, in the 18 months since the trial. The space was bigger, brighter. There was a small patio with wrought iron tables. The hand-lettered menu board was new, but in her same loopy handwriting. Her grandmother's rolling pin hung behind this register, too. The opening day line went 2 blocks. She'd done a small business profile that month in Black Enterprise. The interviewer had asked her how she'd financed expansion so fast. Imani had laughed. I worked, she'd said. I worked the way I always worked. I just kept the money this time. That was the line they printed in bold in the article. She had hired 11 employees across both locations. She had a bookkeeper now, a sharp young woman named Aaliyah Briggs, whom she paid well above market. She had a lawyer on retainer, and that lawyer was Yara Whitfield, whose firm she now sent a Sugarbird gift box to every single Friday. She had a financial advisor. She had health insurance. She had a 401k. She had also, quietly, paid off her mother's mortgage. Loretta had cried on the phone for 10 minutes when she found out. They had Sunday dinner together every week now. They were rebuilding, slowly, in the way mothers and daughters rebuild, one honest conversation at a time. On the night of the new shop's opening, after the last customer left and the staff had gone home, Imani sat alone at one of the bistro tables on the patio with a glass of wine and a slice of her own sweet potato pie. The string lights overhead flickered on as the sun went down. The traffic on Highland Avenue hummed. She thought about the woman who had woken up at 4:17 every morning for a man who couldn't be bothered to thank her. She thought about the divorce papers, the federal indictment, the witness stand, her mother's tears in the bakery doorway. She thought about everything she had built, with her own 2 hands, on the rubble of a life that had tried to bury her. She raised her glass, to no one, to herself, to the woman in the reflection of the shop window who looked back at her with red lipstick on, the kind she used to love, the kind she had bought for herself the morning of her divorce and worn every day since. To Imani, she whispered. Her phone buzzed on the table. A text. From Jihoon. The coffee at your new shop is excellent. The booth in the corner suits me. Jay. She looked up. Across the patio, in the corner booth visible through the window in his charcoal coat, with a black coffee in front of him. He was there. He had not interrupted her moment. He had simply waited for her to be done with herself first. She smiled. She walked inside. He stood up when she came in. 18 months. He had texted her, occasionally, throughout the trial and after, never pushing, never demanding. A book sometimes. A recommendation for a contractor when she'd been scoping the new location. A picture once of the Han River at sunset from his apartment in Seoul, with no caption. She had answered when she wanted to. She had not when she didn't. He had never once made her feel like silence was a debt. Now, in the empty bakery, he set down his coffee. Jihoon. Imani. She slid into the booth across from him, not next to him. across, eye to eye. My family, he said carefully, has been in legitimate logistics for 2 generations. The other parts, the older parts, my brother and I have been moving away from for 10 years. It is slow work. It will not be finished in my lifetime. I will not lie to you about that. She nodded. She had expected nothing less than the truth. Why are you telling me this now? Because the last time we sat in a room together making a deal, you said something to me. You said, if there is something between us, we figure it out as 2 free people, not as a woman who owes you her life. He looked at her steadily. You are now, by any measure I know how to apply, a free woman. I am asking, plainly, do you want to figure it out? She studied him. The man across from her was not a savior. He had said so himself. He was a man with complications she would have to look at clearly, every day, for as long as she chose to stand near him. He was also a man who had given her a knife and a notebook before he had ever given her a flower. A man who had stood out of frame for an entire trial because being in frame would have hurt her case. A man who, when she had said, I am not yours, not yet, had smiled like she had finally said something interesting. I want, she said slowly, to start by you taking me to dinner. Tomorrow, somewhere with a tablecloth. I want to ask you 100 questions. I want you to answer them. I want to ask you about your mother, your brother, the scar in your eyebrow. I want to know what you read, what you cook, what scares you. Yes. And I want it understood. She allowed herself, finally, the smallest smile. That this woman chooses, every day, including the day she might choose to stop. That, Jihoon Seo said, is the only kind of choosing I am interested in. He reached across the table. Slowly. He laid his hand palm up between them, asking nothing. She placed her hand in his. It was, she realized, the first time in 18 months a man had touched her with permission. A year after the new bakery opened, Forbes listed Sugarbird as one of the top 50 Black woman-owned small businesses in the American South. Imani read the article on a Sunday morning, in bed, with a cup of coffee, in an apartment that was hers. She had sold the East Atlanta house and bought a condo in Old Fourth Ward in her name only. Jihoon was in Seoul that week. They had been together, in the way 2 careful people are together, for 14 months. He had keys to her place. She had keys to his. They had not yet talked about more than that. There was no rush. They were both, finally, in lives that did not require rushing. She put the magazine down. She thought about the woman in the courtroom signing those divorce papers with shaking hands, about the woman on the bathroom floor at midnight, crying so quietly the tears didn't even hit the porcelain, about the woman who had believed that loyalty meant disappearing. That woman was not gone. That woman was still in her. Softer, healed, integrated. She just was not in charge anymore. If you've watched all the way to the end, thank you. Truly. I want you to do 3 things for me before you click away. First, hit subscribe if you haven't. There are more stories like Imani's coming, and I don't want you to miss them. Second, share this with one woman in your life who needs to hear it tonight. Just one. You'll know who. Third, drop a comment and tell me, what is the version of yourself you are no longer willing to go back to? Imani Calloway didn't get a fairy tale ending. She got something better. She got herself back. And then, only then, on her own terms, in her own time, with her own name on every door she walked through, she got to choose who got to walk beside her. That's not a rescue, that's a resurrection.